Do you know that triggers are really impacting your parenting? But when you think about going back and actually healing what originally caused the trigger, just feels too daunting right at the moment. Today, I'm going to talk you through the two options you have to deal with those triggers so that they're not impacting your parenting, even though you're not at this point wanting to go back and explore things. So my name's Jodie Thornton, and I really want to talk about this because this is something that comes up really regularly. And I think there's a lot of people who talk about parenting as though we need to be healing everything that's going on with inside of us before we can be healthy with our children. And actually, it's not true. So if we think about, there's a couple of impacts that our triggers have. One is it can change how we show up as a parent. So it can be changing what we can and can't do as a parent, what we can and can't have patience for, what we do and don't react to, right? Now, if we think about the idea that in order to have a healthy relationship with our child, and let's extrapolate that, a healthy relationship with anybody, that we need to be fully healed, there just aren't that many people in the world that are fully healed. Like, it just isn't a thing, right? And so then if we want to think about how we might handle our triggers in a different way, we want to set up a life approach for us and for our children that we're okay even though we're damaged. Damaged is not a great word either, but even though there's baggage that we've picked up, there's issues that are within us that have not yet been healed, we are okay just as we are, and we're capable of having healthy relationships just as we are. So if we think about the skills we need in order to have our baggage and hold our baggage, but not let that baggage impact the other person that we're in relationship with, which in this case is our child, we want to think about what options we have, right? So the big thing that triggers do in our parenting is they make us more reactive, and they can make us, even if we hold our triggers in, they can make us have a different vibe, a different energy in how we show up for our children. And it can change how much we enjoy our parenting as well. So if we take dealing with the trigger itself off the table, because right now either it's not a priority in your life, maybe you don't have the money to go and get some help with that, or maybe you need to deal with it. To be honest, you really could deal with it and you have the money to get the support to deal with it, but right now it just feels too daunting. So we're just going to take that to one side and say that option is off the table for now. What other choices do we have? So one of the choices that we have is to do what I call disconnect the trigger. So when we disconnect a trigger, what we're doing is we're noticing what is it that your child is doing or saying, or something that's coming up in your parenting that is pushing on that trigger. And what we want to do is notice for that trigger, we're not going to go back and look at where it came from. We're just going to notice for that trigger, what is it that it's telling you? So it might be that when my child yells, I am unsafe. Or it might be when my child refuses to cooperate, I'm just never going to get my needs met. Whatever we're looking at about what does the trigger tell you about what's going on right in this moment, what we want to do is look for, is that actually true? So when your child is yelling and you feel unsafe, are you actually unsafe in this moment? And we're not in any way discounting that you weren't unsafe when the trigger started. We're not in any way going back to look at what happened before. But in this moment, when your child yells, are you unsafe? Right? And then we can help. And if it is true, so we want to make sure that you're never, ever, ever discounting or invalidating your experience. So if it does not feel true for you, that no, I am not safe when my child yells, then we're not going to go down this path. I'll hold on for the next one for this, right? But if you think, actually, the trigger tells me I'm unsafe, but really when my child is yelling, it feels unsafe, but I am actually safe. I'm okay. I just, in that moment, everything takes over. So in that case, you can do a couple of different things. One is you can take time every day to actually sit down and go, okay, so when my child yells, here's how I know I'm safe. right? So it feels unsafe, but what I can see is that nothing's actually compromising my safety. My child is yelling, but they're small, or all of this evidence about how I'm actually safe in this moment. This is not what's happening here. Even though the trigger is telling me that's what's happening here, that's not what's happening here. And you want to add into that what is actually happening here. My child's yelling at me because they don't yet know how to handle their feelings, or my child is yelling at me because they're not getting what they want, and I haven't yet figured out how to help my child be able to do what's necessary even when they can't get what they want at that time. Or I haven't yet figured out how to help my child work through what is it they need in order to be able to do what's necessary so that we can get through the morning routine, right? We're going to give your brain both, this is how I know I am safe, and also this is what's actually happening here. And that, we want to get to a place where that can run on loop. So you're almost imagining that when the trigger comes up, there's a part of you that is parenting yourself in that moment that says, sweetie, he's yelling, but you are safe. And here's how I know you're safe. And here's what's actually going on. He's yelling because he doesn't know how to handle his feelings. And so you're essentially, there's a part of you that becomes the parent in that moment. So we want to get to a place where you can actually work through that in the moment. And the more you get through to work through that in the moment, the less often the trigger will actually happen. You'll actually disconnect the trigger. You'll be like, this trigger doesn't apply in this moment when my child is yelling. How we get there is we start by doing it at least once a day. You want to look for what was an example today that I got triggered, or the most recent example that I got triggered. And you're going to go through, this is what I know is not true about the trigger, and this is what I know is true about what's going on in this moment. And that way the baggage stays there. We haven't dealt with the baggage, but we don't have to explore the baggage. We're just saying that trigger does not relate to this experience with my child yelling. So that's our first strategy. Our second strategy is when we go, okay, so maybe the trigger is, it does actually feel true. So it's like, okay, no, I do feel unsafe when someone's yelling at me. It literally is an unsafe thing for me. Or it might be something like when you say, when my child says no really firmly, I feel like I'm never going to get my needs met. I just can't, right? What we're looking for is, what can we do to help your child express what they need to express, or handle that behavior in a way that they need to handle it, that doesn't step on the trigger for you. So if saying no really loudly and firmly brings up that sense of feeling trapped, or a sense that I'm just never going to get my needs met, what we want to do is give your child the skills to be able to express that so that they're still getting their need met, but it doesn't come into your trigger. So if we think about what that might look like, one is, it could be that they're still able to shout, but it's just not the word no, it's something else, right? One way could be that we actually learn the skills to get our child to work as a team. So when you ask them to do something, instead of yelling back at you that they don't want to do that, they'll say, oh, I know you want me to eat my breakfast, but I don't feel like Weet-Bix today, right? And so they're actually talking to you and working through the problem with you. And so in this case, we're actually making it so that we're parenting around the trigger. So we're basically just saying that baggage stays right there, and we're just going to skirt around it and get to a place where it doesn't come up, right? We don't actually, the trigger doesn't get pushed on and then it doesn't impact you. So in that case, we're looking for ways that we might be able to practically avoid the situation coming up. Or we're looking for ways for example, how your child expresses themselves, or solving the problem that causes the behavior or reaction that then causes your trigger to come up. So I hope this has been really helpful. So this is the kind of thing that we can work through in my Confident Connected Parenting program. We can work through, how do you get your child how do you get your parenting to a place where your triggers don't impact your child? So we can work through some of the triggers if there's something that you're happy to explore, or if there's something that you're not wanting to explore right now because it's just too daunting, we can just work through these two options. We can figure out which one is going to be the quickest to work for you in your individual circumstances, and we can figure out a plan for you to step by step implement it so that your triggers just aren't a part of your day-to-day parenting. We don't need to be fully healed in order for our triggers not to impact our parenting. We can heal the pieces that we're ready to heal, and we can parent around the other pieces. So if that's something that you're interested in having a look at, you can I'll put the link in the description of this video, and you can find it at jodithornton.com/confident connected parenting. And that group program is available for you. Once you've joined, you've got access to it for the life of the program, and in that we cover how do we handle our triggers. We also handle emotional awareness skills. So how can you figure out what's happening for your child with their emotions and help them to understand and articulate their own emotions. And we work through communication skills. So this is things like, how do we handle your child having tricky behavior? How do we get you and your child to a place where it's no longer defiance or conflict? We're moving into that teamwork approach. How do we handle implementing boundaries in a healthy way? So we're covering all three of those areas in this program, and if that's something that you'd like to work through, come along and join us. I'd be really grateful to be a part of your village. Thanks so much for watching.